Welcome to the Sloppy Horror Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Ramey. On this show, I'll be breaking down all things horror, old and new. So whether it's current news and movie reviews, or ancient horror history and an in-depth look at Bela Lugosi's morphine habit, I'll be talking about anything and everything. This is a show for the horror community because that's exactly what it is. A community that's adopted me in, given me an identity, an occupation, and a passion to get through the rest of the bullshit in life. I'm the byproduct of a kid that was born in a decade of excess, raised on hair metal and slasher flicks. The American 80s baby. If this sounds like something you can get down with, then you'll probably enjoy my show. I want to give a big thank you to you guys for checking me out on my pilot episode. On this episode, this is my week in review. So that's what you can expect from this show. I will drop a week in review on news that I find, any movies that I see, and I'll discuss it with you guys on Monday. And then also throughout the week, you can expect a couple episodes on all kinds of shit, anything and everything that I think you should know in the horror world. Today we got a big episode. We're going to be talking about some Pet Sematary. I'll give you my full review on that. It's a little late, but I'll give you my full review on that. There will be spoilers ahead if you haven't seen it, so FYI. I'm also going to give you a breakdown on some Child's Play. Big news for Child's Play this last week. For horror fans and sci-fi fans alike, we found out about Mark Hamill, the voice of Chucky. So that's a big holy shit moment that I can't wait to talk about. And then last but not least, we'll be discussing some Robert Englund, some Mr. Freddy Krueger himself. So let's go ahead and get deep into this. Let's talk about some Pet Sematary. Well, first, I want to go out by saying this. If you were to go out and take a poll, if you just polled people born from, let's say, 1965 to 2000, and you were to ask them to rank, if you were to ask them what movie scared you the most, I guarantee you, if you took that bracket from 1965 to 2000, in the top 10 on that list, Pet Sematary would be there. I guarantee it. I mean, Stephen King has such a stronghold on the genre in general, which, no complaints. I love Stephen King. I'm not some prolific reader, but I have read most to all Stephen King books, and obviously seen his movies. With reading, obviously, if you're reading something you're interested in, it makes it a lot easier. And I realized that at a young age, and had cuss words in it. I thought it was cool as a teenager reading cuss words in a book. But loving Stephen King so much and loving all of his movies, when I found out that they were making this remake, the only thing I could really say is anticipation and anxiousness. And anxiousness is a fucking understatement. I love Pet Sematary, the 1989 version. I love it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. So I was very nervous going into it. I really was. And when I saw they were remaking it, I kind of just put it in the bottom of my stomach and I said, nope, I'm not, I don't care. I don't want to look into it. They're going to Hollywood this. They're going to water this down. They're going to make it horrible. That's what I had thought. And looking for, as news was coming out, I found out that John Lithgow was going to be in the movie. So right out the door, I was assuming that he was going to be Judd, the old man neighbor, which he was. And in the original, that was played by Fred Gwynne. And anyone, even not horror fans, everyone's familiar with Fred Gwynne. That's Herman Munster. My cousin Vinny, he was the judge. I mean, he's been in everything. Kill a Mockingbird. So he's just a classic. He has the classic voice. So that was one of the things I was just thinking, how can you replace him and make the movie decent? Because he had the classic one-liners. Sometimes that is better. Everybody likes to say that. But saw John Lithgow coming in, so I was like, all right. And I kind of just forgot about the movie for a while. And I was at a Horror Hound convention in Cincinnati, St. Patty's Day weekend, and they were running promotional for the movie. And there were people handing out like little pins, flashlight pins with Pet Sematary on there. And the horror fan in me got a little giddy. It did. It got a little excited. So I did go and see the movie. I saw it premiere weekend. I didn't see it Friday, but I went and saw it Sunday night after I got the kids to bed. And, I go through my ritual, go to the theater, get my large blue icy, my Reese's Pieces. It's the best combo for a movie. So I go in there, I'm by myself, and sometimes, let me go in on something here. Sometimes it's great to see a horror movie by yourself because you live through other people. If you go see a scary movie through, with your girl, you are an extension of her at that point. You aren't truly invested in your own fear because you're invested in her fear. So you can either laugh about it or feed on it and be afraid at the moments that she's afraid of. But when you go see one by yourself, you can truly, you could do it at your house as well. If you've ever watched a scary movie by yourself in a dark house, you just really absorb into it. And also, the great part about the theater is you hear other people that aren't sitting next to you. You hear their reaction. And it's great because you're not emotionally invested to these people, so you can hear a true audience reaction, not your friend's reaction, not your opinionated asshole uncle who watched the movie, but just the true audience. And it's really neat. Some movies I love to see premiere night. I really do. You have all different, and it's wild to see all different types of people who belong to this community who will show up for these movies, all different, just backgrounds and types of people. So it's great. I love to share that with people. So even before I start talking about the movie, really, I want to go into how I rate movies here on the Sloppy Horror Podcast. It's a point system. It's simple. It's a 10 out of 10 system for a perfect movie. And there's a few categories that can give you those points for a 10 out of 10. So first and foremost, the category being kills. What's a good horror movie without kills? So that's the first category. Second category, I have cast. I don't have a category for plot because I kind of tie that in with cast, because in horror, it doesn't really matter about the plot if you have a bad cast, and if you have a good cast, they can make a shitty plot work. So I just go with cast. So that has a large portion to do with a good horror flick in my eyes, because that's where a lot of people get their starts. Obviously, everyone knows there's a lot of big actors out there who got their start with a horror film. They didn't think it would make anything, and then boom, all of a sudden it blows up. You get your Jamie Lee Curtis's, your Johnny Depp's, your George Clooney's. They just pop out of the woodwork just because they liked scary. And even if it's a bad plot, I'm not saying... let's take A Nightmare on Elm Street, for example. That's my favorite movie of all time. But let's really break down into the cast. It's iconic, so I love everyone in the film. But you get Johnny Depp, and he was a good actor. That was a good level. The boyfriend in the bed, everybody remembers that scene. And maybe without him in the movie, maybe it doesn't work. So casting is a huge part of the movie. Okay, so that kind of brings us to our next category, which is, was it scary? What's the fear meter? Did it make me sit on the edge of my seat? Did I think about it when I left the movie theater? So each of those categories is worth 3 points. So you could be asking, Christian, what the fuck? That's 9 points. How do you get a 10 out of 10? Well, the last category is the fucks with it meter. And if I fucks with it, that's that extra point. It could rate horrible in the rest of the categories and still get the fucks with it point. And It can be the difference for the 10 out of 10 movie. So now that we're covered up on the sloppy horror movie rating algorithm, I'll go ahead into Pet Sematary. So spoilers are ahead. Now, like I had said, John Lithgow had replaced Fred Gwynne in the role of Judd. And to be honest with you, I was super impressed with him. He did great. The man did his homework. He really did. It's great because you could tell he had watched the original movie. So he's out there smoking filterless cigarettes, drinking whiskey, hitting it with the cool the one-liners that the old man did in the original. And it was just great to see. I loved it. And Judd's connection with Lewis in this movie was really great. And Lewis in this movie was played by Jason Clarke. And he's been in a lot of stuff that I love. He was really good in Lawless. He was the middle brother in that. He just does a great job. Those two in the movie, they made the movie, so they do a great job, and there's a great dynamic there. And the major spoiler in the movie, if you haven't seen it, is in this movie. So in the original Pet Sematary, the little boy, their youngest child, Gage, dies, and they bury him in the Pet Sematary. He comes back, obviously. But in the new movie, it is not Gage who dies. It is Ellie, the older child, the daughter. And it added, to be honest with you, as a man who has two daughters and a son, it added a different dynamic. If I bury my son and he comes back alive and he's like, I'm going to kill you, I'm like, square up, what's up? Because it's my son, It's my son. He's not going to beat me. I'm a man. But your daughter, it adds a different dynamic. It really does. And you're not expecting it in the movie, and it's a twist. Right up to the accident, you think it's going to be Gage. He's kind of wandering, heading out towards the road, but his sister gets it. Ellie gets it, and there's just a scene where Judd and Lewis are talking like the original after the funeral of his child, and his family already leaves. Lewis's family's already. His wife leaves with the son, and he's there all by himself, and he's talking with Judd. And Jason Clarke just does a great job. His face, it looks like a man who knows that he could bring his child back to life if he buries him somewhere. You could just see the agony of the man in his face. And John Lithgow, his remorse for showing him the place the Pet Sematary in the first place was. It was really good. It was really good. And I guess we'll start with this first category here, just of casting, since I'm discussing these guys. And I got to give the movie a 2 out of 3 on casting. They just did a really good job. Nobody did bad in the movie. The kids didn't do bad. It was kind of cool that the son, Gage, he looked a lot like Gage in the original movie. So that's pretty cool. And nobody did a bad job, but John Lithgow and Jason Clarke, they win it for the movie. So with only 2 great actors in it, I'm just going to give it a 2 out of 3, which is a solid score. And I guess I can move on to the kills category. And Pet Sematary in general, the book, the movie, it's not that gory. So this isn't going to be a grand slam score, just on principles that it's just not that gory in the first place. Now the horror and the murder in the movie, I don't know if you guys remember in the original, but the Achilles tendon, there's a nice nod to that where there's the view under the bed and you see John Lithgow's Achilles tendon just exposed, and you're just like, ah. That has to be one of the worst cinematic violence ways to go out. It's just, fuck God, the Achilles tendon. They did that in Hostel as well. It's just the worst. But when he was killed, they did it pretty well. It's not over the top, but there's nothing really in this movie that's gonna. It just wasn't that great as far as kills. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a 1 out of 3. And so our altogether score, if you're keeping track now, is going to be 3. And that brings me to the fear meter. Was it scary? And to be honest with you, this is going to get a 3 out of 3, guys. This movie was pretty scary. It had its moments. And when I go off fear rating on the fear meter, I'm not just going to give you a 3 out of 3 just for pop scares or psychological scares or build-up scares. You have to have a nice combination of all of it. I want to be fucked mentally, emotionally, physically, all over. And it's great when you can see a film do that. And I'm really going to give it a 3 out of 3 in this. And I'll go in a little bit on that. So, how I was saying, if you were to pull those people from 1965 to 2000, and Pet Sematary would be on that list, if they had to go in and explain what scared them in that movie, I guarantee the word Zelda would show up, and that was Rachel's sister. And even in the 1989 version, the special effects, they were freaky, man. Her sister was in that blue dress and that bed all curled over with her spine out like a dinosaur, her toes all curled up like some kind of raptor. It was horrible and terrifying. And going into the movie, I'm thinking, hell yeah. I mean, this is 30 years later. So, sometimes the special effects and CGI can work against you. And I can talk a little bit about that as well. I'll give you an example like It. Somebody, had asked me to compare Pennywise from the old movie to the new movie and if I liked it. And obviously, I did like the new It, and I thought it was done well, but Pennywise, most of the new movie was a CGI creation. That's not full acting, in my opinion, so I have to give it to Tim Curry. Nostalgia alone, I'm going the original, but Tim Curry is doing all of his own acting. There's no CGI there. There's just makeup and vocals. So sometimes special effects can work against you. And the nervousness, like I said, going into the movie was mainly with casting, but a little bit about how they were going to do Zelda. But I was also a little excited because I knew they could do it well. And in this movie, the sister Zelda is in way more than the original, and she was freaky, man. She was fucking freaky. So I know that, I'm now happy to know that bed-strucken woman will scare a whole new generation of kids. Because that's the thing with remakes. You got to go in with a grain of salt. If it's making new horror fans that are coming into our community, then so be it. Whatever films were around when you were younger, I'm sure there was an older, snobbier fan that was like, these current films suck. But to you, they were great. So I do understand that these films have to be made. But as long as you do them right. And this one, from a fear perspective, definitely pretty creepy. So we're going to have a 3 out of 3 there. So that brings us our altogether score so far, a 6 out of 10. So now I guess you're asking, do I fucks with it? And the answer is yes, I do. It was good. I recommend it. It did not disrespect the original, and it gave plenty of nods to the original, and for the most part, it looked like everybody did their homework. The 2 directors in this movie, Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer, they've done a couple things that you guys may have recognized. They've done some independent films like Holidays and Starry Eyes, where they've teamed up. They've also worked on the Scream TV series, if you guys saw that, which that wasn't too bad. My daughter actually watched that. So I thought that was a pretty good... It's good when you see these directors staying in horror, because you don't always see that. It's not always something that's happening. People will get in the door of a production company and they'll have to make a horror movie right out the door, and then you'll see they'll never make horror again. So it's very refreshing when you see people adapting into the culture and saying, hey, this is what we make. We love scary movies. And it looks like those 2 fellas have also signed up to make Mama 2. Don't know if you guys saw the original. That was pretty good. Definitely worth the see. So I definitely fucks with the movie, and I'm going to give Pet Sematary a 7 out of 10, and that's the official solid review from the Sloppy Horror Podcast. Pet Sematary, worth a watch, not a waste of money if you see it in the theater. Definitely recommend it. 7 out of 10, and definitely excited for Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer's Mama 2. Definitely want to check that shit out. So, now that we're covered up on Pet Sematary, I think we can move on to Child's Play. Yep, good old Child's Play. Everybody remembers Chucky. If you're a kid in my generation, if you were born in the 80s or 90s, Chucky was a thing. People look now like, how are people afraid of him? Because he got funnier as he went on. Kind of like Freddy did. He became a pop figure, an icon, and he was different. But for the kids of the 80s and the 90s that had just the original films, oh boy. It was bad news. I remember specifically a time where I had to leave with my mom and I'm home watching Chucky. I don't know, I was about 8 or 9 years old. And before we left, she said, hey, will you run down to the basement and grab this box? And I was just watching Chucky. And I remember hitting her with this face like, nah, I'm not doing it. And she's like, what? Come on, it's Chucky. Look how tiny he is. But when you're a kid, shit, he ain't that tiny, man. He ain't that tiny. So how we were discussing with Pet Sematary, the nervousness, I have this a lot when I find out that they're making classic movies close to my heart. I mean, shit, I got Chucky tattooed on my body. So the anticipation and the hopes for this not to be a piece of shit are very, very high. And there hasn't been great things coming out leading up. You know, you have the original cast and crew pretty pissed and boycotting the movie. I'm sure you saw Jennifer Tilly in her little Instagram post sitting there with Tiffany doll saying, we will be boycotting this movie, and we do not support it. And I definitely understand. I get how that can go. I don't know if they're just caught up in their feelings because they're not a part of it, or if they weren't called, or if they're going in a new direction, so they're upset. I'm not sure. I don't fucking know. There's lots of layers to that cake there. But either way, there's a Child's Play coming out. And we've known that. And there's been a release date for the summer, right? So we're like, oh shit, it's coming out like now. So obviously we knew that Brad Dourif wasn't going to be the voice of Chucky. So that's a pretty big bummer. That's a letdown. I mean, that's just how do you replace that voice? It's just like Fred Gwynn in the Pet Sematary. Certain people are just hard to replace. They're close and dear to our hearts. So I'm like, man, I'm looking up, trying to find who the hell's going to voice him, who's going to voice him, and there's nothing out there. I'm like, oh God. It's just going to be somebody random, just some whoever, and it's going to be complete fucking trash. So, all of a sudden, we get a major fucking news flash. Boom, everybody. Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself, is going to be the voice of Chucky. What? Boy. Leading up, everything was shitty. You know, everything was bad for Child's Play. I was not feeling good until I heard about this. Not only is Mr. Mark Hamill Luke Skywalker, he's a very, very talented voice actor. And any fans of the Batman animated series could tell you so. Because really, that's the prime example that you need. And I'll explain why. So, when you think Chucky, and you think of what do you think of his voice? That laugh. You could play that laugh on a loop in a grocery store and people out loud would say Chucky. He wouldn't have to say any words. He wouldn't have to say, hi, I'm Chucky. He wouldn't have to say none of that. Just that laugh. And people would know. So someone was fucking smart enough to say, hey, we have to find somebody to replace him in that voice. So what are we going to do? Well, somebody watched Batman animated series, I'll tell you that much. That's what they did. And they went and got Mark Hamill. Now, Mark Hamill is the Joker. Honestly, obviously he's not physically acting, but he is definitely top rated as one of my favorite Jokers because he has a great voice. He has a laugh that is over the top, and that's what somebody found, and I guarantee that's why they brought him to it. That's why they brought him to the role. Now, Mark came out and he released a video stating, hey, it's me, Mark, I'm going to be the voice of Chucky, and he seemed pumped, so that makes me happy because he understands cult fans. If anybody understands cult fans, it's Luke fucking Skywalker. He gets it. So I think he'll come in with the best intentions and do it well. I'm not saying that the movie's got the full stamp of approval yet, but man, I feel a lot better going into it than I did. So who knows, who knows where this will go. It's going to be different. This Chucky's going to be animatronic. He's going to be like AI possessed versus voodoo. And I don't know if I like that, man. I like the voodoo. Voodoo was cool. He was working with these old voodoo people in the south side streets of Chicago in these rundown projects. It's pretty badass. So, I don't know, but that is pretty retro. I get it, that's pretty dated. But I digress. We'll see where it goes. So, I know if everybody boycotts this movie from the originals and this does well, I'm really interested to see how it'll go from there. If they'll include anybody, have any cameos or anything like that in a further movie. Because as of now, all I know is one movie. They're probably testing the waters and seeing what it's all about. But hey, I'll be there with my Blue Icy, my Reese's Pieces, and we'll figure this shit out together. All right. Now that you guys are all caught up with the Child's Play news, with that flavor, I can sit in your brain for a little bit until we figure it out. But our next topic that I'm pretty excited about because it's a two-part topic. It's Mr. Robert Englund, Mr. Freddy Krueger. He's got some big news going on. So first, I saw that there's a petition to get him in the Walk of Fame, to get his own star in Hollywood. And honestly, why doesn't he have one? He is such an iconic character. Once again, I'll go back to saying the kids of the 80s and the 90s, or shit, really anybody that was a kid in the 80s and 90s, and I mean a teenager too. Anybody that was youthful, Freddy was the man. He freaked people out. He was funny. Shit, he did music, songs. He was just all fucking over. And Robert, he's stuck with horror, and he's great at it. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and name his film list because that would be insulting to a horror fan, but he's a really great actor. He started doing theater things, and he's a very interesting guy. And anybody that's ever heard Robert talk or seen Robert or knows Robert knows that he's not afraid to talk. He will go on. But I find myself to be like that as well. But it's not that bad if whoever's talking has something interesting to talk about. And I think he does a great job at that. And hell yeah, I really hope this goes through. I had posted something to my page about it and how he can get on his walk or get his star. So I really, really hope everybody works together and gets him on there. That would be a really cool day. I'd like to show up for that, to see him put his hands in there. And because he'd probably put his glove in there, wouldn't you think? It'd be like one hand and a glove. Damn, that would be badass. I didn't even think about that till now. But hell yeah, I hope he does that shit. But we should be finding out if he's going to get on there within the next couple weeks. But I imagine he would. There's all kinds of people on that have their own star. So I imagine he could get one. So that's kind of the first part. But how we were saying, Robert's good with talking. Found out some other good news with Robert. Travel Channel has decided to sign Robert Englund to host a TV show for 6 episodes for the start. And it's going to be focusing on haunted times in American history or cool time. Like, they'll be taking newspaper clippings of weird phenomenons and weird, creepy, mysterious shit, and Robert will be going in detail about the case or whatever it may be. And there's not a whole lot of details out, and there's not a premiere date yet, but it's official. He will be the host, and it is, I guess the Travel Channel has had some success within their last couple years with like their paranormal shows, and they're deciding to kind of go down that road, which, hell yeah, shit yeah, I'm real pumped about that. I think Robert, that's right up his alley, man. He is a host. He's like a ringmaster. He's just got that vibe to him. And people could learn from it. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you guys remember the TV show Mail Call on the History Channel a few years back. It had Arlie Ermy on it. He had a huge cult following, and people would watch his show just because it was him. They didn't give a shit what he was talking about. They just liked him. But sometimes when you have that, that outlet or that many people listening to you, sometimes you could teach them some shit. I mean, everybody's had a bad teacher and a good teacher, and everyone knows the difference. So it will be cool to have Robert as a teacher and teaching us about cool times, and it's like some real-life American Horror Story stuff. So I'm really excited to hear about all that. And it's cool to see that Robert's being appreciated in his older age. I'm glad that he didn't just wither off and die. It's cool to see that he's still relevant and doing his thing. It'd be nice to see him doing his thing in One More Nightmare on Elm Street, but hey, I get it. I don't get it, but hey. If he ever made that happen, man, holy shit. I mean, CGI so far now, he could do his face and stuff, and that's all we want, his face and his voice and his him. That's all we want. So, I don't know if the world's gonna mess with this show. I know the horror community will, but I didn't even know people still watch Travel Channel. I still do. They got some cool ass shows on there, like Epic RV and Epic Boats, and all, people that spend millions of dollars and stuff like that, and the paranormal shows. So I still like the channel. So I'm excited to see that other people are too, and to see that they're actually cranking out new shows. So kudos, Robert Englund. Hell yeah, I'll be on the lookout for you, man. And that's going to wrap up our show today. And I want to give you guys a big thank you once again for checking me out on my pilot episode today on Tuesday, April 16th. Like I said, you'll be looking forward to my weekly reviews. I'll be dropping those on Monday. I'm a little late today with the Tuesday, but I'll have a weekly review, and then I'll be dropping some more flavor and some more episodes for you guys, so you guys be on the lookout. I want to thank you guys again, and I'm out.